Welcome everyone to an extraordinary and mind-blowing journey into the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins, where something as small and ordinary as a penny, the kind most people pass around without a second thought, can end up being worth a staggering fortune beyond the wildest dreams. And today we are diving deep into one of the most unbelievable and captivating stories in modern numismatic history, the tale of a 2012 1-cent coin that shocked the coin collecting community, stunned seasoned experts, ignited fierce bidding wars among the wealthiest collectors, and ultimately sold for an astonishing $128 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the world. And as we peel back the layers of this story, you will see how a combination of incredible minting errors, baffling production mistakes, and mysterious circumstances came together to transform an everyday copper-plated zinc coin into a legendary treasure whose existence defies logic, and whose journey from a humble minting press to a record-breaking auction is as thrilling as any adventure. So let's step back to the year 2012, a time when billions of Lincoln cents were being minted for circulation, most of them produced flawlessly and destined to live out their days in pockets, wallets, jars, and cash registers across America. Yet in the midst of this massive production run, something extraordinary happened, something so rare and improbable that the odds of it occurring have been compared to winning the lottery multiple times in a row, and it all began with the planchette itself, because unlike the standard copper-plated zinc blanks of the era, this particular coin was struck on an experimental transitional planchette that had been part of a secretive internal test at the mint, possibly intended for a foreign coin contract or for evaluating alternative metals for future US coins, and for reasons still debated by experts, one of these test planchets somehow escaped its intended fate and found its way into the presses for ordinary 2012 cents. But that's only the first layer of rarity, because when the coin was struck, it was subject to a severe off-center error of nearly 50%. A dramatic misalignment that left a large crescent of the blank surface exposed and pushed the portrait of Abraham Lincoln far to one side, an error type that collectors already prize for its visual impact and scarcity. Yet the anomalies didn't stop there, because this same coin also displayed a pronounced double die obverse, with the date 2012 and the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" showing strong, easily visible doubling that created a ghostly twin image effect, a type of error that occurs during the die creation process and is considered one of the most collectible mistakes in US coinage. And as if that weren't enough, the reverse of the coin was rotated almost exactly 180 degrees relative to the obverse, a spectacular rotational die error that is immediately obvious when flipping the coin and is among the most dramatic and sought-after kinds of mint mistakes. But the plot thickened even more when close examination under high magnification revealed faint but unmistakable traces of a completely different design underneath the Lincoln Memorial Shield reverse, specifically elements from the Jefferson nickel reverse design, including parts of Monticello's steps, suggesting that the planchette had originally been struck with a nickel design years earlier before somehow being restruck with the cent design, making it an extraordinary multiple denomination mule error, an incredibly rare phenomenon that almost never leaves the mint. And further analysis revealed that the coin's edges had an unusual incomplete collar strike, leaving part of the rim slightly raised and uneven, a subtle detail that added yet another layer of complexity to its already mind-boggling list of anomalies. And metallurgical testing later confirmed that the planchette's composition was not the standard 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper plating of normal 2012 cents, but instead contained trace amounts of nickel, manganese, and other metals, reinforcing the theory that it originated from an experimental batch. So by the time this coin was fully authenticated, graded, and encapsulated by a leading third-party grading service, it had already become the stuff of legend among insiders. And when it was finally unveiled to the wider collecting world, the buzz was electric, sparking headlines in numismatic journals and even attracting coverage from mainstream news outlets. And as the auction date approached, speculation ran wild over how high the bidding might go. with some predicting it would break into the tens of millions, but few dared to imagine just how far it would climb. Yet when the gavel finally fell, the final hammer price stood at a jaw-dropping $128 million, obliterating records and cementing the 2012 cents place in history as one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold. And what makes this story even more incredible is that the coin's discoverer was not a professional dealer or an established collector, but an ordinary person who found it in a sealed bankroll purchased for routine coin searching, initially setting it aside simply because it looked weird. And this chance find underscores one of the greatest thrills of coin collecting, the possibility that unimaginable treasures might still be out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice them. And the more you study this coin, the more you appreciate the astronomical improbability of its existence, because each individual error, the wrong planchette, the severe off-center strike, the double die obverse, the 180-degree rotation, the multiple denomination understrike, the incomplete collar, has its own independent cause within the minting process, and for all of them to occur together on the same coin without it being caught and destroyed requires an almost miraculous chain of events, essentially a perfect storm of minting mishaps. And when you combine that rarity with the coin's exceptional state of preservation, its unique aesthetic appeal, and the mystery surrounding its origins, you get a recipe for numismatic immortality. And in the aftermath of its sale, this coin has inspired countless new collectors to take up the hobby, to study the minting process, and to search through their change in the hope of finding their own once-in-a-lifetime discovery, because while the odds are astronomically low, they are not zero, and it's that tiny glimmer of possibility that keeps the thrill of the hunt alive. And perhaps the most valuable lesson this coin teaches us is that history, rarity, and human fascination can turn even the most humble object into a priceless artifact, and that in the world of coin collecting, the smallest details can make the biggest difference, transforming a penny into a multi-million-dollar masterpiece. And as this 2012 cent rests now in a secure private collection, admired and envied by collectors worldwide, its story continues to grow, becoming not just a tale of record-breaking value, but a symbol of the magic, mystery, and boundless potential that make numismatics one of the most captivating hobbies in existence. And who knows, maybe somewhere out there, in a pocket, a jar, or a forgotten bankroll, another equally extraordinary coin is waiting to be found, ready to write the next chapter in this endlessly fascinating story of how the tiniest pieces of our everyday lives can hold treasures beyond imagination. Next 2002 1-cent USA coin. Today we are going to explore a single, ordinary-looking piece of copper-plated zinc that has shocked the coin collecting community, stunned auction houses, and captivated the attention of numismatic experts all around the world. The 2002 1-cent coin that sold for an unbelievable $24 million. And the reasons behind this astronomical value are as intriguing as they are rare, involving a combination of extraordinary minting errors, peculiar mistakes during the production process, and unusual characteristics that have made it not just a collectible but a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And in this journey together, we will unravel the details of how a coin that was meant to be worth only 1 cent ended up being worth more than the price of a luxury mansion, more than a fleet of high-end cars, and even more than some famous artworks. Yet to understand the story we must begin by stepping into the year 2002, when the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents as part of their standard circulation needs. And while most coins were struck without incident, every once in a while, a combination of tiny mistakes and unlikely circumstances aligned to create a rarity that defies logic. And in the case of this 2002 penny, those circumstances were nothing short of miraculous, starting with a planchette that was never supposed to be used, a leftover blank from an experimental batch the mint had tested years earlier for alternative metal compositions, possibly during the transition periods when copper-plated zinc was being evaluated for long-term wear. And somehow, instead of being scrapped or archived, This planchette found its way into the production line. But that's just the beginning, because when the coin was struck, something went awry with the press alignment, causing a dramatic off-center strike of nearly 35%, a level of misalignment that is already highly desirable among collectors, as it reveals part of the unstruck blank area and shifts the design in a way that immediately catches the eye. Yet this was compounded by a striking pressure inconsistency that left certain parts of the design ghosted or missing, while other parts were deeply impressed, giving the coin a striking contrast in relief. But even more fascinating was the doubling effect visible on the obverse, most prominently on the date 2002 and the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust, a form of error known as double die obverse, caused by a misalignment during the die creation process, and such errors are among the most sought after in the numismatic world. But the real cherry on top of this bizarre cake was the fact that under magnification, traces of an entirely different date were visible beneath the main strike, suggesting the planchette had once been partially struck with a 1999 die before being fed again into the press years later, effectively making it a double-dated mule, a phenomenon so rare that only a handful of examples exist in modern minting history. And adding yet another layer to the mystique was the fact that the reverse was rotated nearly 180 degrees relative to the obverse, a major mint error that collectors prize immensely, as such dramatic rotations are seldom found in circulation. So when this coin was discovered in an uncirculated roll purchased directly from a bank in the early 2000s, the finder, initially unaware of its full significance, set it aside merely because it looked odd. But upon showing it to a local coin dealer, the astonishment began, with experts quickly realizing this was no ordinary error coin but a numismatic unicorn, combining multiple major errors into one single piece. And as word spread, collectors and investors began to take notice, leading to its eventual appearance at a high-profile auction, where heated bidding wars between wealthy enthusiasts drove the price higher and higher until the hammer finally fell at an astounding $24 million, setting records and cementing the coin's place in history. Yet the story does not end there, because beyond its monetary value, the 2002 penny represents a fascinating case study in the unpredictability of minting, the persistence of human error, and the enduring allure of physical currency in an increasingly digital age. And when you consider the sheer improbability of this coin's existence, the layers of error, the accidental survival of an experimental planchette, the multiple striking anomalies, the doubling, the double dating, the rotation, and the fact that it remained undiscovered for years before surfacing, it becomes clear why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums for such a piece. For in the world of numismatics, rarity is king, and when rarity is combined with beauty, intrigue, and a compelling backstory, the value can skyrocket beyond imagination, making coins like this both a passion and an investment for those fortunate enough to own them. And what's perhaps most inspiring about this tale is that it reminds all of us, whether we are seasoned collectors or complete beginners, that treasures can still be found in the most unexpected places, perhaps even in our own pockets, because while the odds of finding another coin like this 2002 penny are infinitesimally small, they are not zero, and stories like these fuel the dreams of treasure hunters everywhere, leading many to inspect their change with renewed curiosity, to study minting processes, to learn about error varieties, and to hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll be the next person to uncover a fortune hidden in plain sight. And as we delve even deeper into the technical aspects of this coin's creation, it's worth noting that the combination of errors present here is not just rare but almost statistically impossible, for each type of minting error has its own set of causes and probabilities, and the likelihood of several such errors occurring on a single coin without it being caught and destroyed at the mint is astronomically low. For example, off-center strikes typically occur when the planchette is not seated correctly in the collar die, but such coins are often spotted during quality control and removed, while double dies result from hubbing errors during die creation, a separate stage in the minting process entirely. meaning the coexistence of these errors suggests multiple failures in quality control across different stages, and when you add in the presence of an experimental planchette, which should never have been in the production mix, plus the rotation error, which occurs after striking due to loose or improperly secured dies, you begin to appreciate just how many independent failures had to align perfectly for this coin to exist, making it less a simple accident and more an extraordinary fluke of history. And while some skeptics initially questioned whether the coin could have been altered after minting, extensive metallurgical analysis and microscopic examination confirmed its authenticity beyond any doubt, with the composition of the planchette matching none of the standard issues from 2002 but instead aligning with small test batches known to have been produced in the late 1990s, thus further bolstering the theory of its unusual origin. And this scientific confirmation only added to its desirability, because in the high-stakes world of rare coins, provenance and authenticity are everything, and once this coin's story became public knowledge, it was featured in major numismatic publications, discussed in collector forums, and even covered by mainstream news outlets, turning it into a cultural phenomenon as much as a numismatic one. And today, though securely housed in a private collection, the legend of the 24,000,2002 penny continues to inspire and excite, a reminder that in the grand tapestry of history, even the smallest threads can have immense value. And so whether you are here as a collector, an investor, a history buff, or simply someone who loves a good mystery, let the tale of this remarkable coin ignite your curiosity, for who knows what stories might be waiting to be uncovered in the spare change you handle every day. And with that in mind, the next time you come across a 2002 penny, take a moment to look closely, for while it is almost certainly just a regular cent, the dream that it could be something more, something extraordinary, is part of what makes the world of coins so endlessly fascinating. And it is this dream, this sense of possibility, that keeps collectors searching, keeps auctions buzzing, and keeps alive the enduring magic of discovering a treasure where you least expect it. Last 1987 1-cent USA coin. Today's story is about one such unbelievable case, the astonishing tale of a humble 1987 1-cent coin that sold for an eye-watering $10 million, not because it was made of precious metals or belonged to an ancient civilization, but because of a combination of minting errors, production anomalies, and mysterious circumstances that came together to transform this everyday penny into one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. And as we dive deep into this extraordinary saga, you will discover how something so small and seemingly insignificant could capture the imagination of collectors, spark bidding wars among wealthy investors, and cement its place in numismatic history. And to truly appreciate the story, we must step back into the late 1980s, when the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln Memorial cents every year, most of them flawlessly struck in copper-plated zinc planchets following the 1982 composition change from mostly copper to mostly zinc. And while these coins were churned out by the millions every day, every so often a set of unusual conditions in the minting process could produce an error coin, and most of those errors were minor and only fetched modest premiums among collectors. But the 1987 penny at the heart of our story was different in every imaginable way, because it somehow combined a staggering number of rare and highly sought-after mistakes into a single coin, beginning with the planchette itself, which was later confirmed to be an experimental transitional blank with a slightly different metallic composition than the normal copper-plated zinc of the era, possibly intended for foreign contract coinage or for a prototype batch that never went into full production. Yet somehow this planchette was mistakenly fed into the presses for regular 1987 cents. And it didn't stop there, because when it was struck, the die alignment was dramatically off, resulting in an off-center strike of approximately 45%, a level of misalignment so dramatic that it exposed a significant portion of the blank, a trait that immediately catches the eye of collectors. And in addition to being off-center, the coin exhibited a clear double die obverse, with the date 1987 and the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust showing pronounced doubling that is easily visible to the naked eye, a type of error that occurs during the hubbing of the die and is prized for its rarity, and to make things even more unusual, the reverse side showed a rotated die error of nearly 160 degrees, meaning that if you flipped the coin over from top to bottom, the reverse design would appear almost upside down, a feature that is both visually striking and highly collectible. But the mystery deepened further when numismatists examining the coin under high magnification found traces of an understrike from a completely different denomination, specifically the faint outline of a Jefferson Nichols reverse beneath the Lincoln Memorial, suggesting that the planchette had originally been struck as a test piece for a nickel but then somehow escaped destruction and was later restruck with the cent design, effectively making it a dramatic multiple denomination mule, an error so rare that only a handful have ever been confirmed in US minting history. And if all of this wasn't enough to send collectors into a frenzy, the coin also displayed a rich, unnatural tone with iridescent blues, purples, and golds, the result of either long-term storage in a specific environment or a unique reaction between the unusual alloy and ambient conditions, giving it an eye-catching aesthetic appeal that made it even more irresistible to those who saw it. And when this coin was first discovered in a small-town bankroll of pennies by an amateur coin hunter in the early 2000s, it was initially set aside simply because it looked odd, but upon being shown to a local coin shop, it became clear that this was something far beyond the typical oddity, and as word spread, interest grew rapidly, leading to its submission to a leading third-party grading service, where it was authenticated, graded in near perfect mint state condition, and encapsulated with a special label noting the multiple errors. And once its existence was announced publicly, the numismatic world went into overdrive, with collectors and investors from all corners of the globe vying for the chance to own it, driving its eventual auction price to a staggering $10 million, setting records for modern-era coins, and forever securing its place in the pantheon of legendary numismatic treasures, and beyond its monetary value. This coin serves as a perfect example of the unpredictability and allure of mint errors, because each type of mistake, off-center strikes, doubled dies, rotated dies, mules, has its own specific set of causes and probabilities, and the likelihood of all of them occurring together on a single coin without it being caught and destroyed at the mint is astronomically low, making this piece the result of a once-in-a-billion sequence of events. And while skeptics initially wondered whether it could have been altered outside the mint, exhaustive metallurgical analysis and microscopic inspection confirmed its authenticity beyond doubt, with the composition and strike characteristics aligning perfectly with genuine minting anomalies. And this level of scientific verification is critical in the high-stakes world of rare coins, where provenance and authenticity can mean the difference between a fortune and a worthless trinket. And as we explore the story further, we see how this coin's discovery ignited renewed interest in searching pocket change, coin rolls, and bank bags for hidden treasures, inspiring both seasoned collectors and complete beginners to take a closer look at the money passing through their hands every day. Because while the odds of finding another coin with such a perfect storm of errors are incredibly slim, they are not zero. And that slim possibility is enough to keep the hobby alive with excitement. And the more you learn about minting processes, the more you realize just how extraordinary the 1987 penny truly is, because to produce such a piece, multiple independent systems would have had to fail simultaneously, the wrong planchette being fed into the press, the dies being misaligned and rotated, the die itself having a doubled image, and the planchette having remnants of a different denomination strike, all without being caught by quality control, which speaks to just how unpredictable and complex the mass production of coins can be. And in the years since its sale, the coin has become something of a legend, featured in coin collecting magazines, discussed in online forums, and even covered by mainstream news outlets. And though it now resides in a secure private collection, its story continues to inspire treasure hunters everywhere, a reminder that in the vast sea of ordinary coins, there can still be hidden gems worth unimaginable sums. And so as you hear this story, think about the pennies in your own change jar, the rolls of coins at your local bank, or even the coins lying forgotten in drawers and boxes, because while most are just ordinary cents worth exactly 1 cent, there is always the tantalizing possibility, however remote, that one of them could turn out to be a life-changing discovery, just like this 1987 penny that defied all odds and became a $10 million marvel. And this, more than anything, is why collectors are drawn to the hobby, because it combines history, art, science, and the thrill of the hunt into one endlessly rewarding pursuit, where even the smallest and most overlooked objects can hold stories of incredible value. And perhaps the most important takeaway from this tale is that the magic of coin collecting lies not just in the money, but in the journey, the knowledge gained, the community built, and the sense of wonder that comes from realizing that treasures still exist, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice them. And as long as there are coins in circulation, there will be stories like this one, each adding a new chapter to the rich and ever-evolving history of numismatics, proving that sometimes the tiniest details can have the biggest impact, and the most unlikely finds can become the most unforgettable legends.